Hi, good morning. I'm Bread of Christ 27. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I know it's very early in the morning, and yesterday I couldn't have I couldn't do the video message because I had a lot of stuff to take care of, but this is the only time that I have to do this video message. Um, this topic is entitled, Will Natural Gas be the hooks in thy jaws that God will put into Gog in the Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, Gog and Magog war. So that's the great northern war that is soon to come, right? I always believed that Gog and all its northern armies would invade Israel because of something that Israel has that they want. It's not cattle, it's not anything like that. It's something of value to them, something that could cost billions and billions of dollars because it's all about the money. It always has been about the money. It always has been about the money. Even the pharmaceuticals, it always has been about the money. Everything has been about the money. It's all about the money. All that is taking place in the world is all about the money, right? So something that Gog would lose, that will cause Gog relationship with Israel to be severed and permanently destroyed, which is Russia. Something Gog is going to lose because of Gog's showing its true colors, its characteristics. So Gog has shown the world a precursor of who Gog is. Russia is showing a precursor of who Russia is, Gog. When they feel offended by a nation, or if they feel threatened by a nation, or if a nation has received an opportunity and they feel threatened by it, they waste no time. They prepare their armies, just like the book of Ezekiel. They prepare their armies and they invade that nation. They wage war against that nation. And we have to learn. We have to learn about Israel. Sorry, Israel and the world has to learn about this war of Russia and Ukraine. Look at how Russia's character is being exhibited. Aggression. Russia is power hungry. Russia has lost has is inhumane. Russia doesn't care if children dies with their bombs, with their missiles. Russia doesn't care who dies as long as Russia gets what Russia wants, right? So I always believe that Israel's natural gas is going to be the hooks in thy jaws that God will put into Gog in the Ezekiel 38 and 39 Gog and Magog war. So as I stated previously, the topic for my message is, will natural gas be the hooks in thy jaws that God will put into Gog in the Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 Gog and Magog war? That's the Great Northern War, right? So I shall begin. Brothers and sisters, since Russia's President Vladimir Putin made his decision to invade Ukraine and to wage war against Ukraine, Russia has been imposed sanctions upon sanctions by Europe more quickly than any other nations in the world. Not even the United States is moving as quickly as Europe has when Europe imposed sanctions against Russia. So Europe didn't waste any time. Sanctions upon sanctions upon sanctions upon sanctions, Europe imposed upon Russia. So I'm going a little deeper here, right? With the war that is taking place by Russia against Ukraine, and oil being $100 a barrel, and gas markets are, are being in turmoil, I am sure that Europe no longer has confidence in Russia, nor even wants to depend on Russian oil. Russia is Europe's main supplier of natural gas. But I believe Europe no longer wants Russia to be its main supplier of natural gas. And might I add, Russia being Europe's main supplier of natural gas led to Vladimir Vladimir Putin's wealth. That led to his wealth because he's a very wealthy man. But I believe because of all that is taking place with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and with the oil, and with oil being more than $100 a barrel and gas markets being in turmoil, can lead Europe to make futuristic decisions in replacing Russia with Israel as its main supplier of natural gas. This, I believe, will be the hooks in thy jaws that God will put into Gog, which we know is Russia, right? Because Europe replacing Russia with Israel as its main supplier of natural gas, right? Russia is not going to accept that and just say, okay, nice doing business with you, Europe. No. You see the aggression that Russia is you see the aggression and the power hungry attitude that Russia is displaying right now. You see the force. So you can imagine for Israel when Europe replaces Russia as its main supplier of natural gas with Israel and makes Israel its main supplier of natural gas, right? You think Russia just gonna say okay and just walk away like that? Russia, we are seeing a characteristics of Russia that we probably never saw before. Russia is power hungry, Russia is aggressive, Russia is inhumane, and Russia is showing the world that when Russia feels threatened by a nation, Russia doesn't waste any time. Russia gathers its armies and invades that nation. Invades that nation, whether that nation belongs to it or not, or it's part of it or not. So you can imagine for Israel, right? Also, sorry. So I was saying that this, I believe, will be the hooks in thy jaws that God will put into Gog, which is Russia, because Europe replacing Russia with Israel as its main supplier of natural gas. Russia will not accept that great loss and just move away and say, it was nice doing business with you, Europe. Russia is not going to do that. What does Ezekiel chapter 38 says? A prophecy against Gog. According to Ezekiel chapter 38, it states, And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the prince chief of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O God, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back, and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and army, all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Utopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmets. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Tugama of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Sorry if I did not pronounce certain words correctly. I didn't get time to um, get the full. The, I didn't get a chance to get the full translation of these words because I just wanted to get the video made quickly, the video message made quickly. So I apologize if I pronounce certain words incorrectly. So what I'm trying to say is that Russia is not just going to just accept Europe's decision in making Israel its main supplier of natural gas. Because Russia is showing the world who Russia is, who Gog is. We are seeing a precursor of Gog, right? And also, Israel becoming Europe's main supplier of natural gas will cause Russia, by the hooks God will place in Russia's jaws, to gather its northern army to invade and wage war against Israel, right? And when they invade Israel and they wage war against Israel, we read in Ezekiel chapter 38 and verses 13, and it says, With all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? So they are going to protest. These nations are going to protest on that day, but they are not going to do anything. They are not going to do anything, right? They are not going to do anything. They are just going to protest and say, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? They are protesting because Russia is going to take something of value that they know is of value to them. Russia and all its armies, its great northern nations, they know exactly on that day what they would be invading Israel. They would know, they will know the reason why they would be invading Israel. and they will be waging war against Israel. It's because of the natural gas, which is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. It always was about the money. It's all about the money. Right? And okay, so right. So what would lead Gog and all the other nations to invade Israel? I believe it will be Israel's natural gas. Israel being the main supplier of Europe's. Israel being the main supplier of natural of Israel being Europe's main supplier of natural gas. Israel is a blessed nation by God, right? God said in his word that Israel shall be the head and not the tail, right? And in fact, some years ago, more than 16 trillion cubic feet of natural gas was discovered off Haifa shore in joint US Israel drilling operation. The largest reserve of natural gas, over 16 trillion cubic feet, was discovered off the coast of Israel, right? So if Europe decides to replace Russia with Israel as its main supplier of natural gas, that is going to destroy the relationship Russia has with Israel. Because on March 5th, 2022, Naftali Bennett met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to discuss the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and it became official in terms of Israel is officially mediating between Russia and Ukraine crisis. But I believe Europe in making a change in replacing Russia as its main supplier of natural gas with Israel, and Israel using this opportunity to use its huge reserves. Israel has a huge Israel has huge reserves in Haifa, right? Natural gas. So Israel using this opportunity to use its huge or massive reserves of natural gas would, right? Their relationship with Russia would be permanently destroyed. So it will permanently destroy the relationship that it has with Russia. So brothers and sisters, as we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine, there were protests and sanctions. And we are seeing the sanctions taking place. But in the Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, Gog and Magog war, all there would be is protest. And I read it for you. All people are going, all the nations, all the leaders of the nations are going to say all the people are going to say in high positions is, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Russia and its northern armies are not coming to take away cattle or goats or sheep or anything like that. They're coming to take Israel's natural gas. They're coming to take Israel's natural gas, which is worth billions and billions of dollars, right? So we are seeing protests that is taking place between the war between Russia and Ukraine, and we see that everyone is against Russia, and things are being done, right? Sanctions are being imposed upon against Russia. Sanctions are being imposed against Russia, and it's hurting the Russian economy, right? But when the Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, Gog and Magog war takes place, there's only going to be protests. Nobody's going to get involved. Nobody is going to help Israel, right? Nobody's going to help Israel. And nobody's going to help Israel. Nobody's going to do anything about it. But God designed it that way. Why? Well, he states why. He states why in his word. According to Ezekiel chapter 39 and verse 7. And this is what God says. So I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people, Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen, or shall I say the nations, shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. Right? So Gog and its armies will invade Israel on that day. And what will Israel have that they desire? Well, I believe what Israel would have that they would invade Israel and wage war against Israel. It will have to be something worth billions and billions of dollars. And the answer to that is Israel's natural gas. That is what I believe. Gog and its northern nations, they're not going to invade Israel for cattle and sheep and goats. No. It's Israel's natural gas. Israel will become Europe's main supplier of natural gas because Europe is disgusted with Russia's behavior, with the way Russia invaded Ukraine and killed all of these innocent people. Because a lot of people died in Ukraine. Many people were forced out of their homes. And Europe, Europe will think about their future and in terms of energy, and they would not even want to do business with Russia anymore. They would not even want Russia to be their main supplier of natural gas. So they will turn to Israel. And that is where Israel and Russia's relationship would be severed. That is what I believe. I've always believed in this. Right? It has to be something that it has to be about the money. It's not about cattle. God is not going to invade Israel for cattle or for sheep or for goats. These are not ancient times. Gog, or shall I say Russia, and all of the northern nations that Russia shall gather to invade and wage war against Israel. It's going to be something worth billions and billions of dollars, and that is natural gas. Israel has a massive reserve of natural gas in Haifa. Remember, I studied that a few years ago that years ago Israel found 16 cubic. I want to be correct. Israel found. It states that more than 60 trillion cubic feet of natural gas was discovered off Haifa shore in joint U.S.-Israeli drilling operation. The largest reserve of natural gas, over 16 trillion cubic feet, was discovered off the coast of Israel. So Israel has a huge reserve of natural gas in Haifa. So you can imagine when Europe makes Israel its main supplier of natural gas, Israel will now have the opportunity to use its huge reserves of natural gas. And Israel is going to be a very blessed and wealthy nation. And Russia is going to have a problem with that. The same way Russia has a problem with Ukraine. Because Ukraine had to do something to make Russia invade Ukraine, right? Some decision Ukraine probably made that made Russia upset, and Russia decided to invade Ukraine. So it's the same way Russia believes that who does Israel thinks that Israel is to take away my opportunity of being Europe's main supplier of natural gas. Who does Israel thinks Israel is? They would want revenge. So Russia will go and gather its northern nation because God said in his word, before God did say, be thou prepared. God did say in Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 7, be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So Russia's gonna. So when that takes place, when Israel becomes Europe's main supplier of natural gas, the relationship with Israel and Russia will be severed, and Russia is going to seek revenge, and that's where the hooks in thy jaws of Gog shall take place. God shall put hooks in the jaws of Russia, right? So everything is being put into place, everything is being aligned the way it's supposed to be aligned, designed by God Almighty Himself. So may God richly bless you all. Shalom.